Marvin Gaye is one of the greatest talents that America's ever produced.
His voice was beautiful.
He was really feeling what he was singing.
Marvin Gaye performed at the Howard Theater several times. The Howard Theater is ground zero for black culture and history here in Washington, D.C.
I stood here right where the sun is like that, right where it almost touched the mountain. And Marvin just put his hands up and started singing. I got goosebumps.
Well, you're looking at the big house. It just looked like a house you don't want to be in. This is where Marvin got shot, right here.
I think it's such a tragic way for him to die.
The greatest voice ever is gone.
Los Angeles, April 1st, 1984. Beloved American soul singer Marvin Gaye is coming off the biggest hit of his career, Sexual Healing, which wins him his first ever Grammy Awards. But on the day before his 45th birthday, Marvin Gaye gets into an argument with his father at this house in Los Angeles. The altercation quickly escalates and turns violent. Marvin's father pulls out a gun and shoots his own son twice, killing the legendary performer. In a shocking moment of familial violence, the life of one of our greatest singers is snuffed out in the blink of an eye. And it all happened here, inside this two-story home, a house that people drive and walk past every day without ever knowing the cultural significance of what transpired inside on April 1st, 1984. But why did this tragedy happen to Marvin Gaye's family? How did a father come to murder his own son in cold blood? For every performer, there were places where life-changing events happened, events that shaped and impacted who they became. For Marvin Gaye, it was the Howard Theater and Bo Diddley's basement in his hometown of Washington, D.C., Motown headquarters in Detroit, a secret hideaway overlooking Los Angeles, and inside this house where he was tragically killed. Marvin Pence Gaye Jr. was born on April 2nd, 1939 in Washington, D.C., to Alberta and Marvin Gaye Sr. Marvin and his parents, along with sisters Zeola and Jean and brother Frankie, grew up in a humble part of Southwest D.C. nicknamed Simple City. Bernard Demchuk is a Ph.D. in African American history and culture and lifelong Washingtonian.
Marvin Gaye was born in a highly segregated community, a real slum area, a very dangerous area, an area where, in fact, African Americans who came up from the South with no money had to find housing somewhere, and they found it in the slums of Washington, D.C.
As a young boy growing up in a rough part of town, Marvin would dream of performing at the premier African American venue in Washington, D.C., the iconic Howard Theater, located in the city's historic U Street corridor.
The Howard Theater is ground zero for black culture and history here in Washington, D.C. Marvin would understand that this was the golden ring. To come to the Howard Theater would be the place to be. Here in Washington, D.C., Marvin Gaye played probably about 3 or 4 times. I feel like I'm walking on hallowed ground here. I'm walking on a space that greatness created by African American culture, African American history, and I think the spirits are still here.
Marvin Gaye is just one of the legendary African American performers to grace the stage of the Howard Theater.
That's Ella Fitzgerald, that's Ray Charles, that's Aretha Franklin, and that's Sammy Davis Jr. Ah, Marvin Gaye. He's got the felt hat rocking here. That's nice. What's going on, huh? This is part of Marvin Gaye's allure and Marvin Gaye's hometown hero pride for us. And we love Marvin Gaye, and his spirit is alive and well.
Marvin discovers his singing voice early on. His father, a preacher in a Pentecostal church called the House of God, has him perform in front of the small congregation.
House of God was a Pentecostal denomination that took the Bible literally. It took all the Bible, the Old Testament, the New Testament. It believed in many elements of Judaism, where in fact the Sabbath would be on Saturday, and that virtually orthodox that you could not do anything on Saturday. Particularly, you could not dance, and you could not sing, and you had to spend all day reading the Word of God.
Marvin Sr. preaches at the strict and unconventional House of God Church on Saturdays, often inside of these row houses around 9th and O Streets in Washington, D.C. Zeola Gaye, Marvin's sister, remembers the strict rules of her father's congregation, rules she and her siblings had to follow.
Women couldn't wear pants. You couldn't wear sandals, nothing with your toes out. You couldn't wear fingernail polish. You couldn't wear lipstick. And if it was that time of the month, you couldn't even go into the church. It was just a lot.
Marvin's early childhood is dominated by the strange rules and strict teachings of the House of God, which came with regular beatings administered by Marvin's ultra-religious father.
He just didn't take no crap. And if we needed to have a whooping, then we got it. But I can say this, he never gave us a whooping that we didn't deserve. He didn't just wake up and say, oh, let me beat the kids today. No, he didn't do that.
Marvin's sister-in-law, Irene, remembers Marvin Sr.'s brutal parenting style.
The dad made it known that if anybody didn't do what he said, he had no problem taking them out, because he would say, I brought you into this world and I will take you in.
But Marvin Sr.'s personal issues aren't limited to the domestic violence he performs on his children. He also abuses Marvin's mother, Alberta, and struggles with mental illness and severe alcoholism. Marvin later said living under his father's roof was like living with a king, a very peculiar, changeable, cruel, and all-powerful king. Author Chris Epting believes that Marvin eventually bore creative fruit from this volatile relationship.
Their relationship was always contentious, was always dysfunctional at an early age, and that continued. That became kind of the arc of Marvin Gaye's life. That relationship with his father colored so many aspects of what he did as an artist. The pain from that is something that was always reflected in the music.
It becomes clear to anyone who hears Marvin perform in front of the congregation at the House of God that the boy has a special gift.
By the age of 3, 4, and 5, he was playing drums and piano and singing in the choir under his father's tutelage. His father actually had a good ear. He listened very carefully to music, and he knew that Marvin Gaye had a great voice and a great ear for music.
When Marvin was singing solo in church, it was almost like he was mesmerizing the church. They couldn't take their eyes off of him, and his voice was beautiful.
But it's here, on Clifton Street Northwest in Washington, D.C., at Cardozo High School, where Marvin's passion for singing really kicks into high gear. In his senior year, he forms a doo-wop group with some friends, and they take to the local street corners to hone their craft.
Doo-wop is an inexpensive way of singing and performing if you don't have musical instruments, if you don't have a microphone, and so you stand on the corner and you sing a cappella with 3 or 4 other guys, and you sound fabulous.
After a long afternoon of singing on the corners, Marvin and his friends would head over to the legendary Ben's Chili Bowl on U Street, feeding hungry Washingtonians for nearly 60 years.
This is a place that Marvin Gaye would come and have a chili dog after he would perform. This place looks like it did in 1958. Nothing has changed. If Marvin Gaye walked in here, he would know exactly what to get. The hot dog, the chili dog, or the half smoked. French fries and a Coca-Cola. Hasn't changed since he came in back in the 1970s.
But back home, Marvin's relationship with his father is becoming increasingly contentious. Sensitive yet stubborn, the teenager starts to challenge his father's authority.
It started at the house between he and my father. Marvin didn't like anybody telling him what to do.
One day, in 1956, when Marvin is 16, he gets into an argument with his father about how he's been treating his mom, Alberta.
Frankie and I, we were downstairs playing, and Frankie kept putting his feet on me. And I didn't want his feet on me. I kept saying, move your foot, Frank, get your feet off of me. Father hollered down the steps and said, what are you doing? And my mother jumped in it and said, don't argue with him about that. It's nothing, it's them being kids. And my father jumped back at my mom. One thing led to another, they back and forth. So Marvin jumps in it. He stopped talking to my mother like that. This is like the first time Marvin ever said anything back to Father.
Furious, Marvin Sr. orders his son out of the house. Not knowing where to go, Marvin does something completely unexpected. He drops out of Cardozo High School and enlists in the United States Air Force.
And he realized once he had joined, he didn't want to be there. This is not for me. Too many orders, too strict, the regiment is worse than being in the house with Father. Marvin would not obey anything they wanted him to do.
After just 9 months of service in the Air Force, Marvin is discharged. He heads back to D.C. and convinces his father to let him move back into the family home. Marvin Gaye's singing career would be kick-started in an unexpected way when he's given the chance to record in the home of a rock and roll pioneer.
I give a lot of credit to Bo Diddley. Once he began to learn that his voice was powerful and good, then other people began to pick it up.
But a personal tragedy nearly derails it.
Tammy Terrell was Marvin Gaye's love of his life.
He was introduced to cocaine and got addicted heavily to the drug.
For every performer, there were places where life-changing events happened. Events that shaped and impacted who they became. And in the late 1950s for Marvin Gaye, those places are in and around his hometown of Washington, D.C. Enduring abject poverty, an ultra-religious upbringing, and physical abuse from his strict disciplinarian father, Marvin's teenage years are a constant struggle. His only escape is music, first in his father's church, and then in doo-wop groups he forms at Cardozo High School. In 1958, Marvin drops out of Cardozo and enlists in the U.S. Air Force. But he soon realizes that he isn't military material, and he's quickly back in D.C., living with his father, Marvin Sr. Marvin knows his best chance at success is through music. He forms a new doo-wop group called the Marquis, and it isn't long before the group's soulful singer catches the attention of one of the pioneers of rock and roll, Bo Diddley. Marvin and the Marquis make their first recording in the basement studio of this unassuming house on Rhode Island Avenue in Washington, D.C., which was owned by Bo Diddley in the early 1960s.
Bo Diddley understood that he had a great sound, he had a very melodic voice, and once he began to learn that his voice was powerful and good, then other people began to pick it up. I give a lot of credit to Bo Diddley here.
Bo Diddley signs the Marquis to OK Records, a subsidiary of Columbia Records, and the group soon catches the eye of Harvey Fuqua, founder of the seminal 1950s doo-wop group The Moonglows. Fuqua loves the band so much, he rechristens them the New Moonglows.
He pulled 4 of the members from the Marquis and made them his new Moonglows. So Marvin was now a Moonglow. Who knows where Marvin would have been today?
With a known name and a stable of songs, Marvin and the reconstituted Moonglows perform at Washington, D.C.'s legendary Howard Theater. But Marvin soon outgrows the Moonglows in his hometown of Washington, D.C. In 1960, Marvin, along with his mentor Harvey Fuqua, head to Detroit, Michigan, mecca of modern African-American music, and the home of Berry Gordy Jr. and Motown Records. Former Vice President of Capitol Records, Larkin Arnold, was the music exec who lured Marvin away from Motown in the early 1980s.
Motown, that was the premier black label. You know, the artists were all very great, sophisticated, smart, very fashionable, well-mannered, well-groomed. So it was a source of pride for black people.
It's a revolutionary thing. Berry Gordy at that point was employing about 500 people, this whole complex of buildings for an independent African-American owned business. at that time in American culture, it was a very big deal. And I think what Motown did was it created this kind of racial integration on the radio. All of a sudden, you had rhythm and blues meeting pop and creating this sort of hybrid form of music that was so identifiable that it changed the world.
Marvin's career at Motown gets off to a slow start. He's used primarily as a session musician for more established Motown stars like Smokey Robinson and the Miracles and the Supremes. But all that changes when he begins a relationship with Anna Gordy, sister of his boss Berry Gordy, and a woman 17 years older than him.
And falls in love with Anna, who was Berry Gordy's sister, which didn't hurt his career at all, being in love with the sister of the owner of the company.
Marvin and Anna marry later that same year, and suddenly Marvin finds himself in Berry Gordy's inner circle. He scores modest hits with songs like Stubborn Kind of Fellow, Hitchhiker, and Pride and Joy. All of the pain and emotion of his childhood is channeled through his smooth, honey-tinged voice.
You are more beautiful, and I'm so happy to say that you are mine. With every song he sang, you can feel the emotion. Like he was really feeling what he was singing. It was effortless. He wasn't trying hard. It was just coming out just pure.
After a string of solo hits, Marvin finds his biggest success on a series of duets with singer Tammy Terrell.
They created some amazing records together. And they were really close. Like, you could tell from the chemistry on the records, the chemistry on videos, they were very close.
They confided in each other. He just kept her under his wings, and he loved her.
They were perfect together. Their voices were perfect. And they got into that click of what people wanted. And Tammy Terrell was his soulmate. And they did very, very well together.
Between 1965 and 1967, Marvin and Tammy released 3 albums and 9 singles together, including the hit Ain't No Mountain High Enough. But everything changes for the duo during a concert in Virginia on October 14th, 1967.
Marvin and Tammy were doing a concert, and Tammy collapsed on stage in his arms, and he carried her off. And when they rushed her to the hospital, they found out she had a massive tumor, which was incurable.
Tammy's illness hits Marvin hard, and he goes into a tailspin. He turns to drugs to ease his pain.
Tammy Terrell was Marvin Gaye's love of his life.
Marvin was a very emotional guy, I guess you would say. He wore his emotions on his sleeve. And so just having someone that related to him and that he actually honestly loved with no expectation, he just lost that.
In the wake of Tammy Terrell's illness, something new starts brewing inside of Marvin. He sees the murder of Malcolm X and the Watts riots on the news, and he realizes he's got more to say, and that it's time to rebel against Berry Gordy's Motown formula.
Berry Gordy was quite conservative when it comes to music, but I think it's part of Marvin Gaye's rebelliousness, part of his anti-authority, part of his father's abuse, and part of his social consciousness of seeing police brutality and seeing demonstrators in the anti-war movement being beaten up, as he begins to move the soul music into a more conscious music.
Tammy Terrell dies in 1970, sending Marvin into some of the darkest times since his childhood in Washington.
After her death, he secluded himself in his home for, I think it was a good year. He secluded himself. He was watching the news reports on what was going on with the civil rights movement, what was going on with his brother Frankie was in Vietnam at the time, so his brother was sending him letters, and he was just reading about all of the stuff that was going on in Vietnam.
Marvin grieved, and he grieved, and he grieved, just stayed in the house. And then something hit him, a bolt of lightning hit him. And that bolt of lightning was God's hands.
Marvin emerges from his seclusion in Detroit in 1970 with a stunning cycle of songs that would change Motown and shake the foundations of the music industry.
And that's when he wrote What's Going On. As he told me that the lyrics came from God. It was like he was only the vessel to put it down on paper. And God wanted him to sing that song for the world to hear and maybe learn something from it.
Marvin was able in one album to sum up all the troubles of the world that were basically going on. To me, a classic work of art. It remains to me one of the best albums ever recorded.
But his newfound superstardom will take a serious toll on Marvin. The beloved soul singer will find an escape at a secret sanctuary overlooking Los Angeles.
I think about how Marvin used to stand on the edge and just put his hands in the air and just start singing the Lord's Prayer. He said it was the closest to heaven he would get.
And lead him to a deadly confrontation with his father at this house, one of the most notorious crime scenes in pop culture history.
I think it's such a tragic way for him to die.
Why did you do it? Why didn't you shoot him?
Singer Marvin Gaye had risen to the top of the music world by 1971. But it wasn't an easy road for him. Growing up in Washington, D.C., he'd escaped a life of poverty as well as physical abuse at the hands of his religious father. He's gone from recording his first professional song in Bo Diddley's basement to wowing crowds at the legendary Howard Theater. Crowned the Prince of Motown, he's released a major artistic statement with the seminal album What's Going On.
That album touched so many things that popular music wasn't doing at that time. And that was all because of Marvin Gaye's tenacity as an artist.
It just completely blew my mind. I mean, from one song to the other. And, you know, the way he sung, I played it over and over. And every time you listen to it, you'd hear something, you know, that you didn't hear before. So that cemented my admiration and respect for him as one of the true musical geniuses that we had.
But the more famous Marvin gets, the more complicated his personal issues become.
The bigger you become, the more powerful you become. And then that was causing problems at home because Marvin became the breadwinner for the family, which means Marvin became like the godfather of the family, which means my father was never happy with that because my father has always been the godfather of the family.
Marvin Gaye's success as a singer, I think, just further aggravated and agitated his father because he proved him wrong. That was almost a defiant act, succeeding.
In 1972, Berry Gordy moves Motown Records from Detroit to Los Angeles, and Marvin follows suit, moving his whole family to the West Coast. With Marvin's success, he has the money to buy this Tudor-style home for his parents in the West Adams district of L.A. But what Marvin can't possibly know is that the home he buys for his parents would be the site of his own murder. Marvin's sister-in-law, Irene, and his brother, Frankie, move into the guest house over the garage.
I remember the house, very large, and next door there's a large garage with an apartment where Frankie and I lived. As you walked in through the front door, there was various rooms. The kitchen was in the back. There was a stairs that went up the front.
Bought a very nice home for them, and then he also bought his father a couple nice cars. At one time, I think he bought him a Cadillac. Marvin Gaye understood that maybe if he bought his parents some luxury, that maybe his father would love him more.
But Marvin's problems aren't limited to his father. The early 70s also sees him develop a serious cocaine addiction.
He wanted something to kind of pick him up because of his schedule and his touring and just media appearances and everything. So he was introduced to cocaine and got addicted heavily to the drug.
He loved it, and he just never stopped.
Marvin also has a problem handling his finances. His extravagant lifestyle and expensive cocaine habit mean that there isn't much left for Uncle Sam.
He owed the government maybe $4 million or $4.5 million. He had a tax problem, he had a cocaine problem, he had an alcohol problem, and he had a father abuse problem.
Those demons he never dealt with, they just tortured him for the rest of his life. And he constantly tried to run from it, but never dealt with it.
For Marvin's follow-up to What's Going On, he moves away from that album's politically conscious statements. Inspired by an affair with a 17-year-old named Janice Hunter, Marvin's new songs are seductive and sexually suggestive. The result, 1973's Let's Get It On, is an ode to getting it on.
Marvin said, I make songs and write songs according to my moods. If I feel sexy, I write sexy songs. If I feel horny, I write horny songs. If I feel love in general for humanity, I'll sing songs like that.
Marvin's relationship with the much younger Janice incenses his wife Anna Gordy, who files for divorce in 1975, leading to a highly unusual divorce settlement.
When Anna and Marvin were getting divorced, the judge ordered Marvin to give Anna all the royalties from his next album. And he was just devastated. But he went into the studio and he wrote amazing songs about their whole relationship from beginning to end. And he named it Here My Dear.
But Marvin's relationship with Janice is also troubled. In 1978, certain that she's being unfaithful to him, Marvin flees alone to Hawaii. A toxic combination of jealousy, paranoia, and drug addiction lead to a cocaine-fueled suicide attempt.
It became bad when Marvin was having all the problems he was having and not feeling very good. He wanted to just drown himself out, if it even meant taking himself out.
We are going to top of the world. It's one of my favorite places.
When Marvin returns to Los Angeles, his brother Frankie and sister-in-law Irene take him to a hidden spot high above the city, a place they call the top of the world.
The top of the world is a really unique place. It's in Pacific Palisades. You climb this path, and then when you get to the top, you can see all over Los Angeles. Really happy because this is my special place, and it was Marvin's special place, and we had a lot of memories here. Frankie and I felt that it was a good focus place for him to kind of get his mind back into where he should be in life.
Marvin Gaye finding a place of solitude and sanctity was really important. This was somebody who appreciated serenity and tranquility. And I think to escape the craziness of his life, he obviously appreciated nature and the environment. So for him, it was a very natural kind of escape.
When we came up here, we would feel this relief of all the tension and everything that goes on in LA. I stood here right where the sun is like that, right where it almost touched the mountain. And Marvin just put his hands up and started singing. I got goosebumps. It was magnificent.
But Marvin's trips to the top of the world don't solve his problems. His addiction deepens, his health deteriorates, and his relationship with his father becomes more volatile. And while Marvin tries to forge a new health regimen on a popular California beach,
He would come out to meditate, work out, run, and just try to escape from the everyday realities and the demands that he had as an artist.
a clandestine rendezvous at a prominent New York hotel ultimately seals his fate.
Marvin bought the gun that was going to kill him.
This is Shakespearean all the way. This is tragedy at its worst.
For every performer, there are places where life-changing events happened, events that shaped and impacted who they became. For music superstar Marvin Gaye, those places are scattered across the country. After enduring abuse from his religious father in the slums of Washington, D.C., he realizes his prodigious musical talent in Bo Diddley's basement studio. Then plays the legendary stage at the Howard Theater, before decamping to Detroit, where he becomes a star at Motown Records. His success has allowed him to purchase his parents a luxurious Los Angeles home. But by 1981, Marvin's star is falling. He is twice divorced, addicted to cocaine, and his most recent albums have been critical and commercial flops. For a temporary respite, he visits the top of the world high above Los Angeles, but it's clear he can't escape his demons.
He just felt at peace here. It was his happy place. We would go up to the top of the mountain quite often, but as the drugs increased, it was harder to get Marvin up there.
Encouraged by French concert promoter Freddie Coussart, Marvin travels to the coastal town of Ostend, Belgium to try and clean himself up.
He was a huge artist at that point, and he literally just drops off the face of the earth at that time and goes and finds this respite in Belgium, of all places.
He would run on the beach and eat healthy, and he felt great, and he wanted to stay that way, focused, and get on with his life, where he felt that he'd wasted a lot of valuable years.
He found real solace there, and he began to sober up, and he began to be clearer in his music.
While in Belgium, Marvin grows weary of Motown Records, his label of nearly 20 years. Enter Columbia Records VP Larkin Arnold, who buys out Marvin's Motown contract and travels to Ostend to try to resurrect his career.
I did not want to see a person of that genius wind up dying in exile in Europe. And so if there was anything that I could do to try to salvage his career, I was interested in trying to give it an attempt. I flew over to Ostend and had a chance to meet with him. Then we sat and we talked, and he was in great shape. You know, he'd been jogging on the beach. You know, he seemed very clear-headed, and he just seemed to me to be very, very level-headed, that he had gotten himself together. I said, okay, I'm gonna take a chance with you.
Marvin's collaboration with Larkin Arnold results in the 1983 comeback album Midnight Love and its hit single, Sexual Healing.
That song is a unique song. I mean, people don't really appreciate the genius of it. You know, he was able to combine the reggae beat, R&B, and one of the first to really utilize the drum machine. And he was able to make magic.
Sexual Healing is a huge comeback hit for Marvin, winning him his first ever Grammy Awards. The Prince of Motown was back on top. When a healthy Marvin Gaye returns to Los Angeles in 1983, he moves into the house that he bought for his parents to help care for his ailing mother, Alberta.
When Marvin came back in town, he was healthy. He was staying at the house with his mom and dad and Frankie and I.
Marvin keeps up with his daily health regimen, jogging here at Point Dume Beach in Malibu.
He would come out to meditate, work out, run, and just try to escape from the everyday realities and the demands that he had as an artist.
But the health kick doesn't last long. After a few weeks of living in LA, Marvin finds his former decadent lifestyle too tempting.
His goal was to stay healthy, but the news got out that he was back, and different people from his past, drug dealers, started coming around to the house.
And unfortunately, he started taking drugs again.
Marvin's drug addiction worsens, and it leads to intense paranoia. He's convinced that someone is going to kill him or harm his family. Marvin arranges for a gun to be delivered to his bodyguard at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York City. It would turn out to be a fatal mistake for the troubled star.
Marvin bought the gun that was going to kill him.
This is Shakespearean all the way. This is tragedy at its worst.
The gun is taken to Los Angeles and delivered to his eventual killer, his own father.
He gave Father the gun because Father's bedroom looked over the front of the house. And he asked Father to look out for him.
It was a mistake that would end Marvin's life on April 1st, 1984. 3 days earlier, distraught over his drug addiction, Marvin attempts suicide by jumping out of a moving car. And on the morning of April 1st, his mother is tending to cuts and scrapes he suffered in the incident in his upstairs bedroom. Zeola recounts what happened next.
My mother was trying to clean up Marvin's wounds. He was laying on the bed in his robe. My father comes in and he sees that. And he did not like the way it looked to be laying in his robe and his mother rubbing ointment. So Marvin took offense to it. And he went off on my father, cussed him out, told him, how dare you accuse her, or something like that.
Then, for the first time in his life, Marvin physically attacks his father. In a rage, he kicks and punches Marvin Sr. His father, feeling like his life is in danger, escapes to his bedroom and grabs the gun that Marvin gave him. He returns to confront his son. Marvin stands his ground, daring his father to pull the trigger.
I was in the kitchen, which was directly across from Marvin's window, and I heard, like, pop, pop. I said to Frankie, I think I heard gunshots, and he's like, oh no, we're next to the freeway, you know, it's cars backfiring. And I said to him, no, it was different. Then the next thing we heard was Mother, she was screaming at the bottom of the stairs. So I ran down there to see what was going on, and she told me that Father had shot Marvin.
As paramedics rushed to the scene, none of Marvin's family members knew if he would live or die.
We get to the hospital, and I tried to go in, and they told me I couldn't go in. And a few minutes later, they came out and closed the door, and they told me.
It's April 1st, 1984. And inside this house in the West Adams district of Los Angeles, soul music legend Marvin Gaye has just been shot by his own father, a man he's been feuding with for his entire life.
Right here is where my father came back with the gun. This is where Marvin got shot, right here.
Marvin's brother Frankie and his wife Irene are still inside the house, and so is Marvin Sr. and the gun.
I called 911, and I told the operator, and she told me, you know, it's April Fool's Day, and this is a very bad joke. And I'm trying to tell her, it's not a joke, please, please hurry.
The paramedics arrive at the home, but due to safety concerns, refuse to enter unless Marvin Sr. and the gun are out. Irene goes upstairs to confront her father-in-law.
I saw Father, he was sitting on his bed, just with his head hung down. And I said, where did you put the gun? And he asked me what gun. And I said, I need to find the gun before the paramedics come in to help him. So please, where's the gun? And he never answered. So I just had to start searching for it because I knew time was of the essence. When I saw it under his pillow, I just grabbed it, and I'm like, oh my God, and I just ran down the stairs as fast as I could.
With the gun safely out of Marvin Sr.'s hands, Irene goes back upstairs.
I said to him, come on, Father, we need to go downstairs. And he's asking me what's going on. Why does he need to go downstairs, like, as if nothing had happened?
Zeola and her husband Gary arrive at the house and find her father outside, in a daze.
My father was sitting on the stoop right in front of the steps. He was just sitting there. And I looked at my father and I said, why did you do it? Why did you shoot him?
Marvin Sr. is arrested and taken into custody. While Marvin is taken to the hospital, his life hanging in the balance.
We get to the hospital and I tried to go in and they told me I couldn't go in. And a few minutes later, they came out and closed the door and they told me, said he didn't make it, he passed away. I felt like this is not real. This can't be happening.
The scene outside the house turns chaotic as news of Marvin Gaye's death spreads.
It was just like an uproar. There was hundreds of people outside our house all the time, night and day, just singing, telling each other stories and lighting candles and just grieving. It was really sad.
I was just in utter disbelief. I cried. It was surreal to me. It made no sense whatsoever. It makes no sense today what happened in that house.
For Marvin's sister, Zeola, returning to the location of her brother's murder has been incredibly painful.
As I sit here and I'm looking around, I'm like, wow. Maybe this house was a curse. Maybe Marvin should not have purchased this house. I still believe this house has a black cloud over it. I think about things that went on here. Things that shouldn't have been. And I wish that there was some way I could change time and make all of this go away and have my family back again. I sometimes wonder, what would the world be like if he was still here today? Where would he be? Where would we all be? I miss him so much.
What America lost was this highly talented, highly poetic, highly sensitive performer. I think Marvin Gaye is one of the greatest talents that America's ever produced.
I miss him, and I think it's such a tragic way for him to die.
But is there a way that Marvin could have avoided tragedy?
On the day that he was killed, he was supposed to come to this beach, work out, get his run in, do some meditating. But at the very last moment, he canceled his trip. And now he's gone. Like a few hours later, the greatest voice ever is gone.
People should remember Marvin in a happy way and all the great times he's given them and all the times that they've cried and loved to all his songs. Can't be anything better than that.
Marvin Gaye's massive influence is still felt today. Stars like Drake, Kendrick Lamar, and even Alicia Keys all owe a debt to the style and soul of Marvin Gaye, just as Marvin is indebted to the places that shaped and changed his life. Cardozo High School, where he forms his first doo-wop groups, which leads to his big break in the Washington, D.C. basement recording studio of rock and roll legend Bo Diddley, which gives Marvin the confidence and performing chops to play at Washington's legendary Howard Theater. His struggles with fame and addiction lead him to seek solace high above Los Angeles and turn over a new leaf on the beaches of Malibu. And his attempt for reconciliation with his father leads him to purchasing a luxurious LA house where he spends the final moments of his remarkable and tragic life.
Coming to a place that he would come to rejuvenate himself, it's kind of like you can feel the spirit of him. It's like his essence is still here in this area.